Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. Hey everybody, just excited to show you there are so many versions of making this style of necklace. I like to refer to it as a princess necklace because it's just so princessy. Anyways, I thought I'd share with you. There are many versions on this. I've done so many different styles, but I found this one probably to be the easiest for beginners because we're going to be adding wire. So you can actually decide on which side you prefer. So I decided this on my front, but if you turn it around, it's just equally as beautiful. It's just more 3D because the wires are now hiding around the back. So it's really up to you, and it's your vision of where you really want to go with it. So before we get started, please subscribe if you're new to my channel. And it takes 1 second to give me a thumbs up if you enjoy my tutorials. And your comments and feedback are really appreciated. So let's start with the materials. I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to shrink my camera down. And hopefully I'll be staying in frame. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to pick your beads. I am using, and I've already wrapped one of my necklace chain beads. I'm using aquamarine, and I'm using one 5mm bead, and then one 4mm bead, and then two faceted aquamarine 3mm beads. So I've already wrapped this bead, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm very detail oriented, so I have a lot of patience for beginner, and I'm going to give you lots of tips, tricks, and techniques to accelerate your journey in this ancient art of wire. So we've got that as far as the beads are concerned. I'm going to leave this little guy out because we're going to be wrapping him first and getting him out of the way. Then the next thing you're going to need is 10 inches of 18 gauge round, and you want to mark the middle, okay? And then you're going to need, where is that at? Sorry for the pause, guys. You're going to need 2 pieces of 5 inches of 18 gauge round. Now you can use square. That's up to you, but I think when we're starting out with this design, and especially if you're new to wire wrapping, it's hard to keep your square on the flat side, so it's easier to use the round if you're struggling with keeping your square wire on the flat side. And then you're going to need 2 20 gauge, so you need 2 pieces of 20 gauge, 3 inches long to wrap your bead. Now for the weaving wire, you can either use 26 or 28 gauge. That's up to you. You can also do this with 20 gauge round if you're finding it difficult starting out to work with 18 gauge. So there we go. So let's wrap our other little faceted bead. So I've got my 3 inches of wire here. This is just scrap wire, okay? And I want to show you a technique. I've already straightened it pretty much, but how you can straighten your wire. I'm using a hammering block. You can also use a 1-pound spool of wire or a very big wooden dowel. And all you're going to do is go up and down that wire. It's going to do 2 things. It's going to straighten it, and it's going to harden it. So you want your wire nice and straight. Then I'm just going to find my middle. So this is 3 inches. So that's approximately 3.5. And I'm going to get my needle nose, and I'm going to bend that wire towards me. Then I'm going to get my 6-step bail making pliers, and I'm going to be using the number 1. So if you're new to 6-step bail making pliers, obviously there's 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to be using the number 1. I'm going to put the number 1 where it's facing up and away from me, and I'm going to roll that wire with my thumb and my hand around, and then I'm going to push it, and then going to adjust my wrist. I'm going to roll the plier so I have better control over it, and I'm just going to pull that wire over. And then I'm just going to gently rock it so it's parallel and lined up. So here's what you should have. Then I'm going to get my pliers. I'm going to grab with my needle nose in the midpoint of the loop. And then I'm going to get some flat nose and I'm going to grab at the tip and I'm going to swing that wire around. Now, if you find, these are really good tips, that your wire is going down on an angle, before you complete your loop, just come up underneath that wire. So you're coming up underneath it and just gently push it up so that it's parallel with the plane wire that's coming down here, meaning this wire is on a perfect plane. So now I'm going to grab that tip and I'm going to swing that wire around. As I'm coming back around, you tend to bend your wire here, so just make sure that you keep it straight. Then I'm going to come in and give it a little cinch. And if you saw that, it pushed this wire up back here. So I'm just going to continue. As I'm coming around, I'm going to let that wire go ahead and bend so you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm just going to come in and straighten it out. I'm going to make 4 wraps and I'm going to cinch that down. So I'm just going to continue. Whoa, got the little shakies there. I've had 3 cups of coffee this morning. And I'm going to continue. So that's my 4th wrap on this side, so that you know that you're staying in sequence of the same amount of wraps on each side. Turn your work over, and now you can see that there's 4 on this side. So that's going to help me know where to cut. So we've got 4 here, and we've got 4 here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that wire, and I'm just going to come up underneath it, snip it off, and then I'm just going to roll it and tuck it. So I'm just holding firmly, rolling and tucking. So I'm just rolling, so I'm turning my wrist and rolling on that wire. Want that tip down really good so I don't feel any Sharpies. So now I'm just going to pull this out, straighten her up. Now we're going to drop our bead in. You always want to get your attachments, if you can, and it's up to you, out of the way. So here's an important tip. Do you see how this side is rounding out and coming over, and this side is got the bend in it? That's where we initially bent our wire. So you want to do the same thing. Sometimes our brains get a little confused, so the bend is facing towards me. So all I'm going to do is turn it around so that bend is still facing towards me. And then I'm going to bend this wire towards me so that the bend of each loop is on each side. Now you're going to need about 1 millimeter of length. So you have to compensate for that to get your 4 wraps in here, okay? So you're going to need about that much. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to bend that wire towards me. So you have this. So the bends are equal on each side. Then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to get my 6-step bail making pliers. I'm going to put the number 1 in on that bend where it's facing towards me, and I'm going to just use my finger and roll it over. So you have this. Now this time, instead of pulling the wire over the top, I'm going to bring it under. And this, then I'm going to adjust my wrist so I have control over my plier, and I'm going to bring it around. And then I'm just going to straighten that wire up in the back. If it's off kilter a little bit, I can just rock it. So let's pull that out. Here's what you should have. And you see that gap in there, the way the bead is sliding? We need that gap. I'm going to rock this back a little bit. It's kind of tilting towards the front. So I'm going to come back down here and just rock it back. So now what I'm going to do, now your wire is going in the opposite direction. So I'm going to grab midpoint at the loop. So I'm going to grab right in the middle, so that I have room to get my wire around. If you had your pliers on an angle, do you see how it's in the way of the wire? So you just want to be on the midpoint of the loop. And as before, we're going in the opposite direction. I'm going to swing this wire around. And I keep straightening my tip as I'm going around. And I'm going to cinch that in. Then I'm just going to continue. So I'm coming into my cut. So do you see how the cut here is on top. Do you see that? This little cut is on top. So the wraps are in the same direction and the cuts are in the same direction so that you actually have a front and back when you're setting your chain or whatever you're attaching this to. So I'm going to come up just a little bit, and then I'm going to come up underneath it and cut it. And I'm pitching my pliers, my cutting pliers, my nippers down on an angle, still a little long, so I'm going to come in and clip that again. Then I'm just going to get my needle nose and I'm going to, oops, those are my flat nose, and I'm going to tuck it in. So now we have our two components. Then I'm just going to make sure everything's straight, and you can come in with both your pliers. Just make sure everything's lining up. Just kind of rocking those loops a little bit. So now we have our two little beads set for like I did on the chain. And you can set them anywhere you want. On this one, I just did 2 wraps. I like the 4 wraps better. You can do as many wraps as you like. So I used, again, 20 gauge round wire. So here's a tip. You want to make sure before you cut all your wires that they fit in the hole of your bead. That's really important. So now we're going to start on our design, our little pretty princess. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this wire in a V. So I'm just going to come at the mark and I'm going to bend at a V. Just make sure my wires are nice and straight. Then I'm going to get my round nose in here. So I'm putting the second step in here, and I'm just going to bend that side out a little bit. Then I'm just going to turn it around. So that's the number 2 coming in here, and I'm going to bend that side out a little bit. Now we just want to make sure that they're lined up nicely before we create our loop. So I'm just making sure that they're lined up nicely because we're going to hammer this. So here's what you should have. Now I'm going to get my 6-step bail making pliers, and I'm going to use the number 6. And I'm going to put my plier in here. And I'm going to line this up to where the curve of that bend. So let me show you that again. See, the curve of the bend is resting against the number 5, and the wire is coming out resting against the number 6. And all I'm going to do is just roll it over. So I'm just rolling it over with my hand. I'm pulling on that wire on the tip of it. To make my life easier, I'm going to turn my work over so I can see what I'm doing. So now I'm going to put my 6-step back in here, and I'm going to let that little bend down here on the tip rest in the plier. And I'm going to turn, I'm just going to pull on that wire, and I'm just going to adjust my wrist here so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm just going to pull them together until I see that they're lining up. So let's pull it out. Whoops, just lost my beads there. Don't want these rolling on the floor. So we have this. If it's not even, then just gently pull on each wire like this, closer or further away, depending on how big you want this shape here. So I'm going to just pull this side in a little bit. Now I want to make sure that my center bead is going to fit in there. And it is. If you need more gap space, you can certainly open it up or close it down depending on the size of the bead. And then my little 3 millimeter, so this is my 5 millimeter bead on top. My little 3 millimeter bead is going to sit down here. Let me see if I can keep this right for you. So if you want this to be bigger, just open it up. So now we're going to hammer. And I think I am going to pull from the sides and just open this up a little bit more. I want a little bit more space between my larger 5 millimeter bead and my 2 millimeter bead. So I'm just going to open that up very gently. So now we're going to hammer. This is a hammering block, if you don't know the name of it, and it's steel, and it's got a rubber base, so it holds, I keep knocking my beads off out of my little bucket there. It holds the base of this steel block, and it also comes off. So you can turn it around, or you can put, it also came with a rubber block. So when you want to just harden wire but not change the shape or dent it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my piece on here, and I'm going to hold firmly at the X, and I'm going to start on the bottom, and I'm using a chasing hammer. And if you notice, this is slightly domed, and on the other side, it's called a pinball. So it's a little ball that's for texturing. And I'm just going to drag the hammer away from the bottom until I get the desired look that I want. And then I'm going to turn it to the side, and I'm going to flare out that bend, that gentle curve, so I'll stop here so that you can see the difference. And I keep hitting that with my hammer. You see the difference? So we've got this rounded side and we've got this flare side. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And this time I'm going to hold the side of the wire, and I'm going to flare that out. And I'm dragging away from it. Then I'm going to stop and check my work to make sure my flares are even, and they're not. So I'm going to come in some more, and I'm going to flare this bottom out more. So the bottom of that curve. I'm going to stop, take a look. That looks pretty good to me. So now we're going to buff our wire. And if you're new to my channel, I've talked about these in every tutorial that I do. These are construction grade sanding blocks. They're 180 grit all the way around. So you can get them on Amazon or wherever you choose. I buy them by the case. I don't have any particular love for the manufacturers, just who I got them from. So now I'm going to hold firmly. You always want to clean up your work before you go to your next step. Now these, if you have fingernail file buffers, I can tell you they will not last. That's from experience. This is going to be my back, but I still want it clean, even though I'm going, if you notice, I'm always turning my work around, even though I'm going to be covering it with some wire. Just want it clean, because you never know. I change my mind a lot. I do everything impromptu. I was trying to think about how to do a beginner princess necklace, and so I can't draw. So this is just my basic sketch. I've already done one with dual. You can also set a cab in this. So you could actually wrap a cab that's pear-shaped. So I'm always going to give you inspiration. So you can wrap a cab that's pear-shaped, and then you can set it, and I've done that many times, in your piece before you start shaping. So now I'm going to turn around to my front, and I'm going to buff all that out. And this is going to be step by step. Now, this is a technique I use a lot. I come on a 45-degree angle after I'm done buffing, and that kind of puts a little bevel on the edge. You can also use a nail file. So look at that. Isn't that pretty? So now what we're going to do is we're going to shape the sides. So you should have good clean V. Your piece should be symmetrical. So put it down on your mat and make sure that your wires are evenly separated, where one isn't further down than the other. So really look at that on your mat. And this X right here is coming right in between the center line, okay? So I'm looking at how my wires are coming off to the side and they're both lining up. So that's good. So now I'm going to take the number 5 and I'm going to have the 5 facing me and I'm going to come in this X like this. And now I'm going to gently push this wire around because we just need to make a little arc, okay? So we're just making a little arc here. And you can make it as defined as you want it. It doesn't have to be a soft line. It can be, you know, sharp. It can be on an angle. I'm just telling, this is just in tune of the tutorial. You want to make sure that your wire is level, meaning it's on an even plane. You don't want it in here like this. Okay, you always want to look down your barrel, make sure your wire's on an even plane. So I'm just going to come out here about midpoint on the wire, and I'm going to gently push it around as I'm watching that curve. And I'm going to stop right about there. And each piece is always going to be a little different. So this one's got a sharper bend on it, but that's okay. And then I'm going to turn it over. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Want to make sure that my wires are parallel, and then just about midpoint, I'm going to push it around. So we have something like this. Now, if you want this to be softer here, you can certainly come in with your plier, and with your flat nose, right at the arc, you can literally push on that wire and it'll soften that bend. But I like the uniqueness of every piece. This is where in the middle, our little, this was the 4mm bead. So let me show you. Is gonna go. You can put a any bead you want in there. You can also put a copper bead. On this one, I used a little copper bead down on the bottom. That's a little 2mm copper bead. So now that we've got this shape right here, we're going to shape the wire so that it's going to go down, and then we're going to curve it around. So don't get caught up on the front piece here. It's this wire here. Let me get a tool. Maybe if I turn it over, it might be easier. So if we've got our X right here and we've just made our bend, our curve, don't get lost in all this weaving. This wire is going up. So we're bending it down and then going up. And we're creating another little wing, if you will. The additional wires, the other 2 pieces of 5-inch 18 gauge, are going to be brought in down here and attached and then brought around. So I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to give you as much detail as I possibly can. I don't know how that got in there. So now I'm going to arc this wire down a little bit more, and I'm going to hold at the X, and I'm just going to, right here, I'm just going to pull down on that wire. Sometimes we want to go in the opposite direction of our intention, okay, in order to get the shape in the wire that we want. So I'm just going to turn it over and hold at the X very firmly, and I'm just going to rock that wire down a little bit more. And just want to make sure that they're even. So that looks pretty good to me. So now what I'm going to do is, just like I did here, I made a shape up here and brought it around. You can either use your thumb or use a plier. Right below this curve, I'm going to put my thumb in here and I'm going to gently create a curve. Then I'm going to turn my work over so that I can do the same thing on the other side. I'm coming above the bend there, and I'm going to gently create a curve. And I'm anchoring my index finger off the length of the wire back here as I'm pushing it down, so I'm pushing my thumb in, and I'm also pushing that wire down. And it's a very slow, methodical movement. So I'm going to look at that. And this piece is going to be a little bit bigger, but that's okay. Somebody might want it bigger. I'm going to pull that in a little bit. Make sure everybody's lining up. Okay, so let's set this down on our mat. In the center, we want to make sure that the height of our curves are equal to the best that we can, okay? So now what we're going to do, and I'm going to curve this in just a little bit more. On this one, I just want more shape. I'm just very gently pushing with my thumb. You just want to turn your work over and around. Okay, so now I'm going to set this down on my mat. And I want to make sure that everything is equal to the best of my ability. And right where this curve is meeting the outside line. So these are 1-inch squares. Let me blow this up. Okay. These are 1-inch squares. So I'm just taking my fingers. Let's move all of that out of the way. Okay. Want to make sure everybody's lined up. I'm going to hold firmly here. And then I just want to swing this wire up a little bit more, okay? I'm just kind of rocking it and giving it a little bit more of a bend. Then I'm going to turn it over, line it up on my mat, and I want to rock this wire up a little bit more. Just gentle rocking, just to give it a nice shape. Then I'm going to look at that and make sure that they look as even as possible. So I'm going to turn it over again. Want to make sure that they look even. I'm going to move this down to my center. So I can see if they're lining up equally on the lines. I'm going to rock this one in a little bit more. It's just very gentle movements. So now what you want to do is you want to mark your wire, because this is where we're going to create this bend up here. So we haven't created this shape yet. We do that last. So where our wire is coming up here, you have to determine how big, I call this wings, how big you want. When I looked at this when it was done, I thought it's like a beautiful contemporary butterfly. You know, it's just so artistically free. It could be so many things based on the viewer's eye. So I'm looking at this and I'm determining how big I want my wing. So where this curve is coming in, I'm going to make a mark right here at the line and make a mark right here at the line. You just want to check and make sure that they look equally parallel. And then we're going to take this wire here. So the wire is coming up. Don't get confused with these. I added those in. It's sticking out over here. So here's the point. And we're going to bring that wire over and down. Now you can round it or you can make it sharp. It's whatever you want to do. I'm going to use my number 1 and I'm going to come right above the mark. So the mark is actually sitting inside the plier, and let me shrink that down. You want to make sure that your piece is on a nice even plane. You don't want it on the side. And all you're going to do is grab this wire here and you're going to swing it around. And you're going to let it. Watch that your wire doesn't caulk on you. Swing all the way around. And then right before it starts coming over, I'm going to grab the tip back here because I kind of want, you know, a shape there, a softer shape. And here's what we have. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to bring my mark around to the other side because I'm always turning my work over. So here's my little mark. And I'm just going to mark over here so I can see where it's at because it's on the other side. So I'm going to get my number 1 right above the mark. And I'm going to swing this wire around. And this time, I'm going to make sure that it swings under, okay? And I realized that I cut way too much wire, so we can actually use this entire piece of wire. And I'm watching how they're lining up. So do you see that? I'm looking at the width and watching how they're lining up. So that the X's are equal in the middle. See how the wires are crossing over? So you should have something like that. So we could actually, instead of bringing in a second piece of wire, and if any of you have been following me for a while, you know I change constantly as I go. So we could actually do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to shape these tips here, or you can leave them like that, and we're going to hammer them. So because I could literally bring this wire right here around, make a loop, bring it back under. So if you can follow me here, this wire here, I could actually loop it in here and then have it trace the bottom wire and then create a loop here, okay? But to stay in line with all the wires that you probably already cut, we'll go ahead and bring in our secondary wire. But this is just how I work, and I see things and I'm like, oh crap, we could have done, since we cut 10 inches, we could have done 8 inches, if just to continue in this concept where I'm bringing in a second piece of wire. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut at the X. So I'm going to cut at the X right here in the middle, and I want to make sure that my wires are equally lined up. So I'm going to cut right here, and then I'm going to cut. Notice how I'm always turning my work. My hands are a little shaky from the coffee. So I'm just going to look at those, make sure they're lined up evenly. This one's just a little long. Just taking the tip off. I want the tips of my wires to meet, and that helps me gauge, are they equal in length? So I can push this one down a little bit just to see. And I think there are. They're about as good as they're going to get. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to roll this wire in. So if you notice how I'm holding my work, I'm going to hold firmly here on the wing because I don't want to change the shape a lot. And if you need to, and you need to get into your piece, just give yourself some gentle working room. Just pull that wire very gently out without compromising your shape. Now I'm going to be using what's called a half flat. Okay, so it's half flat on one side and it's round on the other side. So it's literally a flat plier on one side and a round nose plier on the other. These are by Xuron. And what I'm going to do is what the benefit of these pliers, and I can tell you and attest to it 100%, is that when you're making loops and you're using 2 rounded noses, you will dent your wire just based on pressure alone. So to avoid that, whoever created these was brilliant. You have a flat side, which prevents you from denting the wire as you're making your loop. So I know that I want my loop to be on the inside, meaning I want the rounded part of this nose to be on the inside. So before I even do that, I'm going to flatten my tip and I'm going to give it a point. So I'm squeezing on that tip. Do you see that? So I squeezed on that tip to create a point. And then I'm going to come underneath. I'm going to let the tip stick out a little bit. I'm going to slide my plier up based on the loop size that I want, and I'm going to start to curve it in. Then I'm going to push down on that tip. Now I'm going to just keep following that turn. Now before I entirely loop off, this is just what I do. I'm just going to create about 3/4 of this loop until I decide where I want it, how I want it to look, etc. So I'm turning my work around and I'm coming up. I'm going to lift that wire up so I have some working room, and I'm going to push this wire away from me so I can get in there. And then I'm going to come up. I need the rounded part facing me, and I'm going to smash that tip. And I'm rolling off of it to give it a nice point. And do it just a little bit more, just rolling off of that. So now I'm going to come in with my plier, leave a little bit of that tip out, and I'm going to start rolling. And now I'm going to adjust my wrist, and I'm going to roll it about halfway. And this helps you with symmetry. So you notice how this loop is wider, meaning it's bigger here. So that's not a problem. We'll just come in, hold very firmly on both your wires. And I'm just going to bring that down a little bit, so they're more equal in size. And just do when you're starting out, because I have to tell you, loops and swirls are probably one of the hardest things to learn in this ancient art of wire. So I'm just going to come in here, start rounding that tip out a little bit more so they start matching up. And I'm going to come in with my file before I do anything else. I told you this is going to be a step-by-step, very detail-oriented tutorial. So I'm going to file that edge down a little bit. It's a little jagged. So I want to file that down and clean it up. And I'm using a 180 grit fingernail file. Then I'm going to turn it over. See how this edge right here is a little jagged? That tip needs to come off a little bit. I'm going to come up underneath it. This is why I don't close anything off right away, so I can clean up my work as I'm going. That's much better. Just wanted a soft point on that. I'm coming on an angle. So I'm going to open this one up so I can get up underneath it. So I'm going to bring my round nose in there, and I'm just going to roll back on it just a little bit. And then I'm just turning it around. Let me turn it this way. Coming in on an angle. Oops, I keep using the wrong side. Now here's another tip. If you keep forgetting which is front and back, although both can be, but based on where I hammered, okay. So I know this is my front. There are no hammer marks. And back here, there's just some subtle ones where I buffed. So just to keep me on track, because sometimes I'm just going to mark that so I can remember that it is my front. Okay, so now let's complete our loops. And I'm going to come in with my plier. I've got the round nose in here. And I'm just going to roll this in. Oops, I used the flat side inside. That's okay. So I'm always going to turn my work around. And I'm going to roll this in. Let's take a look. Those look pretty good to me. So now I'm just going to push those down a little bit. Now, if you want more curve or you want to change your shape, this is the time to do it. You can also, so I'm always giving you inspiration, you can also come and push this wire further down and just stop here. So you could literally take this right here, push it all the way through so the loop is sticking out here, and you could just make a very simple little winged, pear-shaped necklace and add all sorts of beads, right? So I'm going to hammer, but before I do that, do you see my marks? So right where the marks are, or right where the curve is in the wing, I am going to put a little dent in it. So I want my number 1, actually I want this on the outside. I want my number 1 on the outside, so the number 2 on my 6-step pliers is hugging against the curve in the wing. So I'm holding very firmly right here where the 2 wires come together, and I'm just going to make a little bend. Just with a little pressure. Then I'm going to turn my work over. I'm going to hold very firmly here, and I'm going to make a little bend. I'm twisting my wrist towards me. So you have these beautiful little wings. Now I'm going to push these through a little bit and then let them rest very gently against the wire. And I'm going to turn, I'm super picky, I'm going to turn the tip in on this just a little. I mean just a little tiny little. Just giving it a little pressure. There we go. That's better for my eye. Now you could literally come in here, more inspiration, and bend that wing back in on the top. You could literally close them together. I'm just gonna always give you lots of ideas, you guys. So now I'm gonna get my hammering block because you want this good and hard, and I'm gonna hold very firmly, holding my piece down very, very firmly. Wait, where's my front? That's my back. See what I mean? So I could have forgotten and just started going and went, oops. It's not a huge deal, but I'm going to take my chasing hammer and I'm going to flare out the base of this wing. And I'm going to harden this wire. Then I'm going to come up on the wing a little bit, and I'm going to start flaring out the tip of the wing. So if you're using 20 gauge, you probably really want to make sure that you hammer, because you don't want your wire to bend. Now here's another tip. You can round this out more if you want. You would just simply get your plier in here and you can round that shape out more by curving it up. I like the little wing look. So I'm gonna go ahead and come off this wing a little bit more. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to hold very firmly, and I'm going to flare out the wing. And I'm going to check my work and see how my flares are looking. Pretty good. And then I'm going to flare out this tip. Now you can at this point, if you wanted, flare out your little loops, but I'm not going to. So this is my back, and here is what we have. That's the back, this is the front. So now before I do anything else, I'm going to buff these wings out. I'm just holding it down on my board to keep myself, by holding it in my hand, I don't want to tweak the wire. And it happens all the time. holding very firmly. I mean, I am pushing down on that wire so it doesn't move. So that's the back. Let's turn it around, make sure I didn't make any tweaks. Now I'm going to clean up the front. I'm going to do that in my hand, and I'm letting the wing rest over my entire finger. And the hopes of that is to keep equal pressure on the wire so you don't jackknife it or bend it. You don't want to have your wire out here doing this. You're going to bend it. You want to have support on the wire. Even though this is going to be covered with a lot of weaving wire, I'm just in about keeping everything nice and clean. But it's up to you. So here's what we have, and you can see that it's just a little bit, but not a whole lot bigger than the original one that I did. So now I'm going to clean up these loops. This is my front, and I'm just going to buff them out. Be careful you hold firmly so that you don't tweak or jackknife your wire. Just want them beautifully smooth. And the same thing over here. Let's turn this way. And let me take a look. So that's really pretty. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring in, and it's going to be too much wire, but I don't know what I was thinking because this was all impromptu yesterday when I made my first piece. And I don't know why I thought I needed so much, but that's okay. It's helpful when we're starting out. So I can already see that this 5 inches of wire is way too much wire. Because if you think about it, we're going to be bringing it in. We're going to make a loop, okay? And then we're going to follow and trace the shape of our piece. Then we're going to loop around, and then we're going to loop around again. So we're kind of making like a figure 8. Do you see that? So we're kind of making a figure 8. So I'm going to straighten my wire, and I'm going to get my hammering block. And when I'm doing that movement, I'm going over each section of wire. So it's nice and straight. Do you see how straight that is? And this one's got a little curvy going on. So I'm going to start in the middle, move my wire down. If you have too many bends in your wire, this will not straighten it. You have to flatten out those bends. And you can feel it when it starts going really straight on you, because it really just rolls beautifully underneath you. So now we're going to add in our wire. Okay, that's my back. This is my front. I knew that, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our ends flush, and we're going to make a loop. And I'm looking at this space in here, which looks a little bit bigger than the space in the other one. And I think I'm going to make a bigger loop. So I'm going to come in and just flatten out that tip like before. I'm squeezing on it as I'm rolling the plier towards me. And then I'm going to squeeze on it a little bit more, and I'm going to just roll. Now, because I'm adding 2 pieces of wire with the same, I'm going to do a little bit of each because I want to keep as much symmetry as possible. So I'm just going to squeeze on that tip while I'm rolling the plier towards me. And then I'm going to match them up. Now I'm going to clean them up before I roll them in. So I'm just going to get my buffer. And I'm kind of buffing on an angle. I know I told you guys this is going to be very detailed step by step. I'm not cutting any corners. I want you to be a part of every little thing I do. And you know, just personality-wise, that's my nature. I love to teach and share with people. I love think tanks where we all come up with ideas together. So I had a neighbor that wanted me to add a clasp to a bracelet that was way too big for her. And, you know, I went through all these struggles. There's always pressure when you're doing something for someone. And as simple as that is, it was like, damn. And she had all this excess, beautiful, big, huge sterling silver jump rings that were completely soldered. So I tried several different concepts without having to cut off any of the metal, and I just didn't like it. So this is what I mean by a think tank. So I'm going to get my 180 grit nail file now, and I'm going to bring this to a point. And I'm doing it on a 45-degree angle. Anyways, I brought it over to her and I said, you know, your bracelet's still going to be so big no matter what size hook I put in here. And she said, what if we just let that whole section dangle? And I thought, great idea. So that fixed that. I'm just going to bring it into a little bit more of a point. Very hard to hold this little end. Sometimes you got to come in with your flat nose so that you can control the wire, because round wire loves to roll. This way it doesn't keep rolling in my finger, because you have to work very close to what your intention is on the wire. I'm trying to give you as many techniques as I can. So if you can't figure out how to smash the wire, you can file the wire. So here's what we have. So I want my loops, I think, a little bit bigger in here. So I'm going to get the number 2 for right now. I can always shrink it down. Now I can put both my wires in here and line them up. Or I can do one at a time, because this one has a little less of a bend on it. So I'm going to do one at a time. So I'm going to come in with the number 2, and I'm going to let the tip of that wire hug around the barrel. And I'm going to come towards me, and I'm just going to start curling. And as I'm curling, I'm putting pressure on the wire here to keep the loop a little bit more open until I decide the size. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And then I'm putting some pressure on the wire back here. And I'm actually using this to my advantage to curl that wire in. So let's take a look at our loops. So those are pretty good. So now we're going to line it up and see how it's fitting in here. So if you want your loops to be relatively open, you can leave them like that. So on these, I left them slightly open. I loved that look. It's really personal preference. So I'm looking at that, and that looks pretty good to me. But I'm just going to get my number 1, and I'm going to turn the tip in just a little bit. So I'm going to let the plier rest on the curve. So see how that curve is turning down, and I'm just going to give it a little turn in. So I just softened that loop in a little bit. So I'm going to get my number 1 in here. I'm just going to curve it in just a little bit. It's a very subtle movement. So I like that. So now I'm actually going to hammer these. I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I'm just going to put my wire down on my hammering block, and I'm going to hammer the curve. First, I'm going to gently tap it down and flatten it. I'm very gently doing that. Then I'm going to look at it and see if I like that and if that's good enough. I kind of like that. It's very subtle. It's a very subtle little turn in the wire. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Hold my wire down, and I'm going to gently tap on that wire and just flatten it down. I'm going to take a look at these two because they're both going to sit underneath the wire like this. So this one's not as closed in. Once you've hammered your wire, you have to remember it's hardened. So all I need to do is come in here and just kind of push the top of the curve in a little bit so it softens up that loop. So there we go. So these are going to sit down in here. So now I'm going to clean my work up. And I told you guys this is way too much wire. I'm looking at all this wire here and I'm like, oops. But I use all my scrap. Want this beautifully clean. Don't want any nicks in it. That's going to sit in there. So this is the same thing. I just want to clean this up. Okay, so let's take a look. Straighten everything out. I still want the tip of that to be pushed in a little bit. So I'm going to get my flat nose. And I'm just going to, let's go this way. Let's see, what's my best working position? I'm just going to squeeze that tip down a little bit by rolling on it. Better. Just bugged me, that little subtle thing. Ah, gosh. Oh yeah, I just love that. So now we're going to bring our bead in. I'm going to be using 26 gauge weaving wire. So the first thing we're going to do is, while we have open space in our frame, we're going to bring in our base bead. And I'm thinking down here, instead of using aquamarine, because I kind of want my middle bead here and the aqua here. Should I make it all aqua? So it's just 3 aqua beads, or should I add in some contrast? Because these are going to sit up here. So it's just personal preference, right? Let's take a look. So those are going to sit up there. So should I make it all aqua? I wish you guys this was live. Or I think I am going to do copper on the bottom just for some contrast. Let's see what bead size I can get in there. Roly-poly. I don't know. I think I'm going to use a copper bead down there. Okay, so let's get, oh, I need that bead. Let's get all this paraphernalia out of my way. A lot of stuff. Ooh, I just threw my wire. Okay. Let's move all this back. I have to be very mindful not to knock anything over. Okay, I'm going to move all my wires, everything out of my way. And I'm debating still if I want that size. Yeah, that'll work out. So let me tell you what size this is. Where's my little caliper? If you don't have a caliper, I highly recommend you get one. I have an electronic one and then a manual one. This is a 3mm copper bead, okay? So that's what I'm going to be setting on the bottom. So I'm going to be using 26 gauge weaving wire. And I'm going to cut myself about, because I might be weaving up the entire frame. I'm going to cut myself 2 feet. I'm hoping that's enough, or if it's too much, I'll just keep the excess. Then I'm going to fold my wire in half. So I'm going to bring the 2 tips together, and I'm just going to fold it in half and pull down here on the bottom. Then I'm going to set my bead. Now, there are 2 ways to set the bead. You can have the bead sitting on top. On this one, I made it as such to where the bead is sitting towards the back. I didn't want it popping up through the stone. I kind of wanted it to hide in between the wires, right? So the way that you do that is you're going to bring in your wire. You're going to put your wire through your bead. I'm going to let it drop down to the middle, and it'll make sense here in a minute. And instead of having your bead sitting on top like this is my front, I'm going to put the bead in the back so that it sits snug right inside that little bend or little V. Then while I have this frame here, I'm going to gently just push this wire back a little bit just to open it up. And I'm going to move this guy out of my way. Stuff flying all over the place. And I'm going to come around. So I'm coming out the back. I'm going to come over. So I'm pushing the wire over. Then I'm going to slide it underneath. See, that's my working space there. And I'm going to tighten up that wire and slide it down. And I'm going to really give it a good snug. Then I'm going to turn my work over, and I'm going to push this over. Now this time it's got to come up underneath the wing. So I'm coming up underneath so I can pull that wire around, and I'm very snugly with my fingernail as I'm turning my work over. So now this is the back, and you see how the bead is popping up versus just elegantly being nestled against the frame of the wire. So I'm going to do a series of wraps. Just push that in. And I'm going to see how much wire I have. I want to rock that wire tight in there. Okay. So I just had a thought. I should have probably cut a lot more length. That way I could just keep running all the way up when I add in my pieces, but it's okay. Adding in sections of wire is no big deal. So here's what I'm going to do. I've decided on this one. This one I let some bare wire exposed. On this one I'm going to wrap up until I reach the point where I need to set my center bead. So before we do anything else, I'm going to do that off camera because you don't need to see me wrap coil over coil over coil, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I coiled up and I stopped because I kept bringing in my bead. Sure, I had a good gauge of where the hole is. So you see that hole right there? And how it's going to line up where I come in with my next wire. So I stopped right there because we're going to feed both of these wires through this bead. So how do we do that? If you've never done that, it's very fiddly. I don't even know if fiddly is the right word, but what you want to do, I'm going to teach you a really cool technique, is you want to make some healthy loops. You kind of want a circle, right? And then you're going to hold your wire, and you're just going to feed your bead through just a little bit. Okay? Like that. Then you're going to feed the other wire through. Okay? and you're going to feed it through equally so that the length is similar on each side. All right. So now you want to slide, so you're going to hold the wire here. I'm right dominant, so I tend to do things on the right first. And I'm going to pull a section of that wire through. So I'm way down here. And then I'm going to pull a section of this wire through while I'm holding the bead. So that's going to keep me from kinking my wire. So here's what we got. I'm keeping a healthy loop the entire time. So I'm going to hold my bead. Here's my loose wire here, and I'm going to pull it through a little bit. Then I'm going to hold my bead and pull it through a little bit. Now you want to keep a healthy loop. So I'm trying to keep a nice circle here in this wire down here. If you don't do that, it will kink. And I'm just going to keep sliding until I can see that they're relatively equal. And then I'm going to pull very tightly. Then I can line it up inside. Okay, let's pull these real tight and real tight. So now I'm going to continue my weaving, and I don't want any slide or gap in there. So let me make sure I didn't tweak my wires. And actually this wire here needs to come up so it's parallel with the other wire. It's down below it. I want it on top of it. And then I'm going to bring it under so I can wrap on top. So I'm now going to bring this one over because I want to wrap this way. And let me just make sure. If there's too much gap, you can always tuck the wire over these wires. Oh, I just felt it cinch in. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap this around, and I'm going to have to probably bring in more wire. That's why I was saying a little while back, I should have just cut like 5 feet of wire and I could have just continued with the same wire. But it's really good to see all the different ways you can do this. Because I'm going to pull that in a little bit more. I'm going to arc that down and arc that down, just pulling it down a little bit more, and then I'll push these up. Okay. Make sure they're lining up. Okay, I got to stop there because I've got to bring in my loops. So let me take a look. So this one goes here, and that should be perfect right there of where this loop is coming in. So let me make sure they're equal on each side. I'm going to snug this down, holding very firmly. Okay, now let me grab my other one. And that looks like, see, you want to be able to wrap your loops in. Let me show you. So see where my wire's coming, my weaving wire is coming out. And I think I'm going to go around. Let's try one more time. I don't want it covering up the curl in the tip of that loop. I want that exposed. So this is where I'm gauging when I want to start to weave in that loop. So let's take a look. So we could do a little practice run here. So let me show you what I'm thinking, what my creative process is. I'm going to hold this like that, and I'm just going to swing my wire. I just want to get an idea, okay? So it's going to swing it through that loop, and I want to see, before I do anything, how that's lining up, or do I want to come up a couple more coils? And I want to come up again. So I'm just going to slide that out. And make another coil. And let's see. Oh, crap, Deanna. Okay. Just want to see, again, how that's lining up. And I think that should work. So before we do anything else, we're going to shape this wire. So you want to hold, and I noticed I tweaked this a little bit. This is what I mean. Kind of want to curve that down a little bit more and straighten that out. There we go. So now I'm going to hold my loop right here against this wire and position it the way that you like it, to where the bend in the wire, see how it's meeting here? So I'm going to hold right here, and all I'm going to do is very firmly swing this wire up. So I'm just swinging it up, okay? So that's what we got. Told you it was way too much wire, you guys. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Going to line it up where the curve of the loop is resting against the curve there. And I'm just going to swing the wire up. So we've got this. If I can hold it for you. Let me put it down on my board. Well, that's not going to work either because the bead is in the way now, but let me see if I can give you a better visual. Oh my goodness me. So I can't do it. It just keeps wanting to fly up. Okay, so now we're going to capture our loop. And I want to make sure that they've got similar shape. So I'm just lining them up, the curves up. Okay, so let's set our first one. I don't even know why I do that. It's like, why did you do that? It's a little fiddly, you guys, until you connect it. So I'm just going to bring this in here. So I'm wrapping inside the loop. I'm going to bring my wire over and through. Very gently pull your loop through, especially if you're working with 26 gauge, or you'll kink up your wire. Then I'm going to pull that good and tight. Make sure that it's flush. So come in with your flat nose and just flatten that out. And you just got to keep moving your work around. Now I'm kinking my wire up. I'm doing what I told you not to do. I'm going to turn it over on the back. I'm going to flatten that up. I want it flush, or you'll ride the loop over the piece, which isn't a problem. It's just a different look. Just gives it more dimension. I want to straighten up. This is the fiddly part until we connect. I want to straighten up this one right here. I'm going to use my fingernail. Actually, where's my little pokey tool? There's a bend in the wire that I don't like. Oh my goodness, Deanna. You probably can't see it, but I can see it, and it bugs me. It's fiddly D holding this together there, but you can do it. You can't learn if you don't try, right? Okay, slip that through there. See, I knew there was a gap in that wire. I could feel it. Okay, I want this flush. So I'm going to come in with my flat nose. And the reason why I keep doing that is I want to keep it flush against the frame. And it's going to do that. It's going to flop over until we connect it. You could connect it separately, meaning not have it all part of this. Not a problem. You could have just done this and then brought in wire and start setting your secondary wire. This makes it a little bit harder, but I wanted to use the wire that I cut. Okay, I got a gap in that wire. So if you find this difficult, just stop after you set this bead and then just bring in another piece of wire and start connecting your loop up here. You would set your bead first on top, okay? So I'm going to give you the other way I did it. Set your bead first on top and then wrap in your hook, your little swirl here, and start weaving up, okay? So if that makes any sense. Now I've got a little kink in there, so I'm going to back out of that. I can see it in the wire. So I think that would be easier for you guys, is to just weave in here and then cut wire and start attaching here. Set your middle bead first, okay? So I want you to imagine running your wire through your middle bead here and then start connecting the sides. That will be much easier for you, especially for starting out. I got a bend in this wire here that's bugging the dickens out of me, and I need to get my bent nose and see if I can get on top of it. Get that little bend out. And I'm wondering if I should do that. No. You know what, you guys? I'm going to switch up because I think this is going to be really frustrating. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut this wire out of here. So I'm going to take this out and I'm going to cut back to here. Let's see. Actually, so this is the beauty of how I work in the creative process. And I really want this to be more user-friendly. And as I'm doing this and realizing I'm getting irritated because I wanted to use one solid piece of wire, I'm just going to teach you how to do it the easiest way because I think this is a little nutty. Let's see if I can slide that out of there yet. Yep, I can. Perfect. So now I'm going to show you. I'm going to unravel this, tighten that up. So let me show you another technique. You get these kinks out, just use your fingernail. Now you've hardened that wire, so you don't want to snap it, okay? Where's my other loop? Ruh-roh. Hopefully it's on the floor somewhere. Too many tools. I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to do it the easier way. So I have cut 2 feet of wire again, right? You have to decide if you want this sitting on top or, if I don't lose my bead, because remember this is our front, or sitting behind. Okay, I want mine behind, so my wires are coming out the back, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to set this bead, and I'm just going to wrap 2 times, and I'm keeping these wires down here out of the way. These guys, okay, that were up here. Okay, now I'm going to wrap this side. I'm going to get it nuzzled in that little space there, pulling super tight. Okay, let's see how it's lining up. Okay, we need to line that up a little better. I'm going to come out of that. It's not tight enough. There we go. I actually moved that about, oh, I don't know, just a small amount, but just enough to really tighten it up. So now we're going to bring in our loops. This is going to be so much easier. And set your loop according to how you want it sitting on your piece. And now we're going to connect. This is so much easier, you guys, but you got to see the different ways that you could do it. It's just takes so long the other way. So I'm wrapping around the base wire once, twice. Whoops. And then 3 times. So you're going to do 3 complete rotations. You want to leave yourself some gap space. So open this up a little bit and watch how you're doing this so that you leave yourself the gap space, okay? And then we're going to come over the top and back through it underneath the wing in between these 2 wires here. And you're going to wrap 3 full rotations. So that's our 3rd. It's so much easier to control it this way. I'm dropping that loop down a little bit, watching my gap. So now I have to be mindful now because I'm going to be bringing this wire right here around, and I'm going to be looping it back in. That's why I need this gap space, because I'm going to need to attach this loop down here. So this wire here is going to swing around, and then it's going to come back in and make another loop. So we're not going to do that yet until we get some connections going here. So I'm going to do 3 wraps. Keep your gap space. Just keep pulling back on that wire. Now I'm going to connect this loop to this wire. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to come over, but I'm going to come in between first. Okay, so we're coming around this loop. So this wire's coming through the wing, okay? Come in between the wing and the outside wire. And then we're going to wrap over this loop. We're going to come push the wire through the wing, not the ring, and then come around. Watch your gap here. You want to keep some healthy gap. Then so we're coming underneath, right? So we're going to come around in between these 2 wires or in the back. You're going to feed this wire through the wing. Push it around. It's coming around the back. And then we're going to do 3. I keep rocking this wire down. Coils. Okay, so we're going to continue that, but now we've got to feed through the wing because we don't have that open space. Whoops, caught my wire here. I keep pulling back on that wire. Oops, I missed it. So we're going to complete this one side together, and then I'm going to complete the other side off camera because it's the same exact thing. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend doing a little bit on each side because when we're first starting, it's easy to forget. It's very easy to forget. And it's like, how many did I do over there? And then you catch yourself counting forever, and it's just easier. Everybody has a different way of doing things. Notice how I'm rocking that down. So see this down here? We're going to use this wire after we're done, where I tried to use one solid piece to capture that loop right here against that open gap space in the frame. Anchoring this wire down. 3 full rotations. Okay. And then we'll complete the next part of the wing. So on this one, if you notice, I coiled a lot more here as I started getting into the arc of this because I wanted that bare wire of the wing on the back. So I'm checking it out, looking at how I'm going to be doing this. And I do my 3 coils here. So let me take a look at that. I really like the bare wire on that wing right there, where it's curving. So I am going to now, so here's what we've got. We've got 3 and 3, 3, and then we wrapped our wing, then 3, 3, 3, 3, right? So these are our repeats. We've got 2 sets of repeats before we start coiling down here. I'm going to swing that wire down a little bit, and I'm going to start with 10. This is why we need this gap space. So I'm looking at that, knowing that I'm going to be curving this wire up. And I'm going to do, that's 10. I'm going to do 3 more and see what I think. So now I'm just going to very gently curve this wire towards that little bend in the wing. But I'm going to keep some space here. So I'm holding here, holding firmly here, and I'm just rocking that wire up. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to do the other side because we're going to be bending this and connecting it. So I want to make sure I'm on the same plane with each side, and I will be right back. So I'm going to weave up to just like we did here, where we curve this to the inside here. Okay, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I weave the other side. So just like over here, right? I'm going to turn it in a better working position for me. I'm going to rock this wire, and I can see it's not scooped enough right there. So I'm going to rock it because I want that little bit of gap there. And then I'm going to turn it over. So here's what we have, and it's just coming along. Now, before we complete this, I'm going to go ahead and wrap these loops that I struggled with earlier, trying to just make it hard for you. And I'm going to just feed them through. So I'm going to do 4 or 5 complete wraps. And it's so much easier now because I'm not having to try to keep that loop flush against the frame because it's secured. We don't want to fight the wire, right? At times we do. I'm going to cut this tip. It's got a knot in it and I could feel it catching up. Let me see if I can swing it. I got so many wires all over the place. So let's see how many we're going to need here. So much better, y'all. See if I can sneak that around under there. Oh, perfect. Okay, I've got 4 wraps here. So I'm thinking that I want to wrap just the last couple around that bare wire inside the X. So this is the wire coming around the back. So I'm just going to feed it through. So I've got 4 wraps securing that loop, that little swirl. Just coming through the middle of that X there. And I know all these wires can seem very confusing when you see them sticking out everywhere. Don't want to kink my wire. You want to keep a healthy loop in your wire when you're feeding it through so it doesn't kink up on you. But it just caught on my bead. So I've got 3. I'm going to do 1 more. I'm just going to leave that around the back for right now. I'll be bringing it through again. So that's what I wanted to accomplish. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this 4 times and wrap up the wire here in the X 3 times, and I'll be right back. So I wrapped up to give it that effect. Now what I'm going to do with these wires in the back, I'm going to feed them through, but not wrap them around. Just going to feed them through, and I'm going to snap them off. If you've never snapped your wire before, it's a very clean break. So I'm just going to feed it through. So they're both going to come out the top. So don't get confused, all these wires in the back. I'll go ahead and hide them. So these are coming out the top. And instead of trying to cut them and tuck them, I'm holding my piece very firmly. And it's a wiggle jiggle, and then eventually it just snaps clean off and breaks in between the wires. So wiggle, jiggle, and there we go. And that's significant scrap wire that I can use for later. So I'm gonna put that in my little envelope. Okay, I have envelopes, if you're new to my channel, for all my wires and marked with the gauges. So here we go, we're almost done. I'm going to start shaping this up a little bit. Just want them lined up, equal bends in the wire. And this is obviously too long, this wire. Make sure that the gap is decent right there. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to add, because I really like that bareness right there, I'm going to add a couple of more coils. I think I'm going to do 5 more. I'm going to take a look at that. And I still want to see the full curve in this wing right here. So I'm going to come up, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3. So that was adding 8 to the 13. So now we have a total of 23 coils. Let me do this side and see what I think. And we're almost through 2 feet of wire. So let's see, are those even? Slide that down. That looks, I know it's so weird, 1 coil short. Okay. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to shape this here as a loop. Okay, so this wire here, we're going to make it into a loop and bring it down. And it's too long, obviously. So I want to round that out a little bit more. I'm going to cut this length off up here. I will not need all that. So we could have gotten away with about 4 inches. All right, you can do this by hand or you can use a tool. It's really up to you. I'm just going to swing this wire, holding my hand down here. I'm just swinging the tip so I maintain shape on that wire. And then I'm just going to keep pushing it down, and I can narrow it in, but oh boy, am I liking that bigger loop there. So I'm just going to bring it down, because each one is always going to be very different. So I'm going to hold here, bring that shape in, bring it down, Oh, that's pretty. I like that too. So I'm going to bring this, narrow this in a little bit more. Do that with my plier. See that bare wire there? That's just so pretty. I didn't want to connect it yet because I really wanted to see. So you can see that this one's much more narrow and this one's bigger. You can make it as small as you want. If you want this loop smaller, you would just come in with your round nose on your 6th step and just pull it in. You can also, this is an easier technique. I told you this is going to be filled with a ton of details. Come in and flatten this at the arc. So you see where it's arcing here? So just come in and flatten that out right at the arc. Just make it where it's more straight. Just make it more straight so you can narrow that wire down. So it's not as big of a bow in there. Let's see what we got going here. Okay, so now I'm going to pull on this tip. Holding here, I'm going to pull on that tip, straighten up my wire. It's just personal preference, everybody. So however you perceive it to be, let's get my wires out of the way. I'm going to straighten up this wire. I'm simply doing that by using the inside of the jaw of the plier. And I'm going to just tilt this down. Isn't that pretty? I hope you think it is. Okay, so now we're going to connect up here. And you're going to have to feed your wire through. I don't need all this length here. So I'm just going to spread these out to make sure my length is even. And you see where the wire hits the curve here? That's where I'm going to cut it. So let's take a look at that. We want them to be even in length. Want our loops to be even. So here's what we got. So now we're going to connect. I'm going to bring this through this loop, both these loops here. You're going to have to do some feeding through. We're going to bring it around the back. We're going to feed it through the one outside wing. And then we're going to slide it underneath. Okay, you want to keep that gap space there so you have some working room. I'm going to feed that through. Feed it through both loops. Then feed it through the outside wing. We're going to slide it underneath. And we're going to do one more. So we're going to do 3 repeats of this pattern. Feed it through the wing. Now we want to really make sure they're good and snug. Coming around the back. Now I'm going to just weave a couple of coils right here to tie it off. I could weave around this. It just kind of makes it hard because you guys got to keep feeding it through and feeding it through. I could have done it before I created the shape, but I didn't because this is all spontaneous, this stuff that I do. I'm not a drawer, as you can see. And there's no such thing as a drawer. I don't draw. My girlfriend always says, buy the book, Drawing on the Right Side or the Left Side of the Brain. And I'm like, no, I don't want to buy it. So I'm going to do 3 complete rotations. And do I want to finish and go around? Let's check that out. I've got the wire to do it with. Actually, I'm going to bend this down a little bit more. Notice how I'm tilting that off? And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm always seeing things and making changes as I go. I love that little butterfly effect there. So I think I don't want to cover this up, so I'm going to stop there. So let me do this side and I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got both our secondary loops or wings. We've got them both connected. Now I want to give you some more inspiration. If you wanted, with your excess wire at this point, is you could bring in, and I wish I had an oblong shaped one, but I don't. But let me show you. You could bring in a bead. To fill in this corner. Isn't that pretty? So you could literally bring in a little bead right here to fill in the corner, where this one has got the chain, right? But if you put a bead here, you're gonna have to set your chain down here, which there's nothing wrong with that. You could put a bar through here, but I'm not gonna set a bead, but you could. So you could keep setting beads, little tiny 1 millimeters, all on the inside. But I just wanted to give that to you as a idea of, again, what you can do. Just use your imagination. So I've done 3 wraps on the end. I'm going to snap it off on the back. So I'm going to feed it through one more time for 4th wrap. Then I'm going to hold very firmly at my weaving, and I'm just going to wiggle jiggle and snap it off. Snug it in and make sure everybody's good and tight. Okay, and just a wiggle jiggle, and there we go. And just roll that wire, and it's literally tucked away. This is turning out to be so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and put my scrap in. All right, so let's finish decorating. So on this one, I rolled the loop up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to swing these down even more. So hold here at your loop. Don't hold down here, okay? Hold here and just swing that wire away from the frame, okay? And we're gonna hold here and swing. I'm using the tip of my finger to swing it and curve it away from the frame. And you want them to be equally lined up. Okay, wow, just so pretty. It's really like a butterfly to me. So now we want to curl these in, right? So I'm just gonna line these up a little bit more. This is too much wire unless you wanted a big loop. You could easily put a big loop in here, but I don't. So I know I've got 3/4 of an inch in length on each side. I'm gonna line this up on my board, and I'm going to cut it right below the 1/2 inch mark. So I want it. So if my wire from the base of the wing is 3/4 of an inch long, I want it a little bit longer than a 1/2. So I'm coming in between the 1/4 inch mark. Same thing here. Then I want to make sure that they're even in length. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loop. So I'm going to get my very specific pliers. I don't know where they went. Here they are. And I want my loop, so this is, let me get out of that screen. Like here, I want it to roll inward. So this is going out, this one I want it to roll in. So I need to move these wires further away, so I'm going to hold here at the loop and I'm just going to curve this more. And curve this more. I'm holding the loop. And don't worry about this bend it puts in it right there. It's actually very pretty the way it changes it as we're coming back in for the loop. And I'm looking at the length of that wire again. That should work out. If it's too long, I'll cut it. So as before, I'm going to smash that tip. That looks good. Do the same thing over here. I'm going to smash that tip. Oops, I just cranked my wire back. Let's see how badly I did it. That's not too bad. This one still looks... Got to take a look at that. Make sure my loops are equal in length. This one still looks longer. It is. So I'm going to cut that tip, just the tip of it. That looks better. All right, I don't know where my buffer went. And my drawer is stuck with all my buffers in it. Do I have any more out? Let's see. I'll be right back, you guys. I got to find my buffer. We are almost done. So you just have to decide on the chain. I'm using a 3mm copper chain here. And all I did was use a jump ring to connect it to the bead we made to connect it to the chain. So I don't think I need to go over details with that, but let's make our loop. So I'm going to get in my best working position and I'm going to start rolling this in. Just do about halfway because I want them to be the same on each side. So I'm going to start rolling this in. Let's see what we got going here. Looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to keep rolling. And I'm going to make that smaller, and I bent my wire there. So let me do some cleanup. Oh, I went in with the wrong way. See, I too make mistakes. I used the round nose on the outside of the wire. So I need to clean that up. I'm going to square up that wire a little bit because I really tweak that, you guys. And I'm going to even make it smaller so that I can hide my mistake there. So that's better. I'll be able to clean that up. Let's go ahead and roll this one in and make sure I'm using the right size of my pliers. Okay, now I want this loop up in here because we're going to connect it. So these are actually too big, but let me just swing it up and see what happens. And I need to straighten out. So here's all sorts of techniques. I need to straighten out this bend in here. Now I could leave it there, but I actually want that loop to be a little smaller. Yeah, I want it to come up higher. So we're going to fix that. Let me get them equally lined up. Yeah, you could leave it like that. I just want to change it. I'm going to cut half my loop off. So I'm going to cut it right in the mid mark. And this one, I really tweaked that wire. So let's take a look. Hopefully I'll be able to salvage that. I should, because I'm deliberate as hell. We're almost done, you guys. I knew this was going to be at least 2 hours. I really hope you enjoyed it, everybody. Please give me your feedback. And if you have questions, please let me know. Just flatten that tip a little bit. I kind of already tweaked this piece of wire, so I may not be able to get away with much. Holding very firmly as I'm rolling on that tip. Oh, this is going to be so much better. And I'm just going to make a little loop, just a little one. And I'm going to leave it partially open because we're going to connect it. That's why we needed that gap, and that's why we separated, why we weaved 3 wraps each time so that we had space to get in there with our wire. I want to make sure I got my plier in the right direction. It's a constant shifting your wire to get yourself. Now you can pull this away if you want. I'm not going to. Now let me see. I did a very small loop. And I'm going to leave it partially open. Look how pretty that is. So we're going to connect this in these gaps here. I'm going to blow this up and show you what I mean. So I was able to correct and compensate. I'm going to buff these out. I'm buffing the entire bare wire out. Pretty, pretty, pretty. So, just a little aquamarine. You guys could bring in beads here. You could change the shape of the wing here. You could literally bend it down. You could bend this in. It's just however you see it. So I want to show you what I like to do to my coiled wire, especially after I've hammered the base wire. I like to come in with my flat nose, and I like to flatten it. If you hear my phone ringing, I'm sorry. Okay, so let me do it on this side. Like to just come in and give it a really crisp, flattened wire look. I'm just shifting it around and flattening. Ooh, almost a little too much pressure. That wire out. Then I like to come in with my buffer. And you guys, I think I squished my bead. That's okay, I can slip another one in there later. I did. And these are not solid copper. They're seamed, so if you squeeze them, they will crush. So I'll bring another bead in and slip it in between these wires. I would show you how to do that, but I think based on our 2-hour time frame here, we're good to go. I just like that flattened wire look. Yeah, you see what I did? I squirted my bead. So I'll cut that out of there and bring in weaving wire. I'll uncoil some of these and it won't be a big deal. Okay, so let's go ahead and set. I'm just tweaking. We're gonna set our loops. So you wanna look for the best gap space, and I'm already seeing mine. So I'm gonna come in here. You're gonna need a very sharp tool. I use a dental tool. You can get these things for dirt cheap if you go to Harbor Freight. Oh my gosh, you can get a whole thing of dental tools. So I like this dental pick. The tip has bent over time. So right here, where your loop is, right past where we connected this wire with these two, I'm going to come in between. and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to show you how I'm pushing this wire, this pick through here. Can you see that pick coming through there? Let me push a little bit more. I want to give myself that space. It's right there. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, right where my wires. I just saw something here, you guys. Saw a bent piece of wire. I'm going to lift this up and push that down. I don't know how that happened. It's going to be hidden anyways. Okay, so put my tool back in there and see where I want it to go. And I can see that I want to go right here. You want to make some decent pressure. Open that up so you have a hole to work with. Now I'm going to use 28 gauge. And I'm going to use 28 gauge weaving wire. And I just need a little bit of scrap. I've got a lot of scrap here from my little scrap pile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave on this leg first. You can do as many coils as you want. If you want to coil all the way up, you go for it. I'm going to open this up so I have some working room. I want to make sure that my wire is coming over the top so that I can feed it through that space. So I'm going to do 3 complete full rotations, because I'm going to be snapping this wire that's sticking up out on the back. Okay, so now my wire is coming out on top, right here, and I'm going to feed it through. I'm going to slide it down. I'm going to feed it through my loop and that space I created. And then I'm going to start connecting, keeping my thumb there so I don't kink my wire. You don't want it crossing over your loops. And I'm just going to slide it through. So it's now coming out the back. I want it to come around. So your loops are going this way, right? Just make sure I give myself enough space to work through there. And I'm going to go through twice, because I can see that I've got enough gap space. It's hard for you guys to see where I'm pushing it through, but I'm pushing it through where I created the gap space with my pick. Watch that they don't cross over. You just got to control your wire. I'm going to come here and hold my coils with my nail so that I can just slide it through. So I've got 2 wraps in there. So now I'm going to feed it through this loop, the wing. Actually, you guys, I think I'm going to do this one a little bit different. First of all, should have snapped this off the first time I connected. I'm snapping that little tail wire off. I'm thinking of hiding my wire. Yeah, I think, okay, let's go through the wing. Everyone is a little bit different, so you have to compensate for how you're going to do it. So I'm going to come through both wings. So let me back out, because I just saw what I want to do. Okay, I'm going to come through both wings. Going to come up underneath so I can hide. The wire went underneath the secondary wing, right? And I'm coming underneath it so I can hide that wire underneath and then wrap it. Got to keep a fairly loose piece of wire there so that you can feed it back through the same wing, the secondary wing, because we're going to coil back here. So now I can just feed it through this gap. Once I've made my initial wrap, I keep my thumbnail there so my coils don't bind up on each other. And let's do one more. Just wrapping it around that wing. And there we have it. So I'm going to snap that wire, and it's firmly connected, holding firmly on my piece, snapping that wire off. So I want, again, my wire to come over the top, right? So I'm holding the tail down here with my nail. I'm going to do my 3 complete full rotations. Then I'm going to slide this wire down, and I'm going to feed it through the hole that we made, the gap in our wire. So I'm going to come around and do that, just like the other side. Slide this up. One more time. Sure I don't bind my wires up. Oops, I caught this one. So let's pull this little guy out, because I'm not going to unravel anything. And I'm going to snap this wire. Okay, not yet, I ain't. There we go. So I've got this binding up over. I need to move it out of the way. Now I'm going to slip it through both these wings. I need to kind of come over and under. I need to get up underneath that. So let me lift up on this a little bit so I can slide that wire through. Yep. I need my little pick. Kind of binding up right here. Need a little bit more space under there. There we go. I just felt it lock in. So now I'm just going to come back through the secondary loop, slide my wire up, and make a little loop in the wire itself so I can just feed it through. That's 2. Did I do 3? I did. So let's make a little loop in my wire. See that little making? It's like a little hook, so you can just feed it right through, and it comes right up the inside. Okay. So we have finished our beautiful princess necklace. Now all you're going to do is decide on your chain, okay? You're going to get your jump rings, or you can add chain and then put this in. It doesn't have to directly come off the top of the wing, so you could put chain down here and then bring it up. You could do many of these to make a beautiful chain with the faceted beads all the way up. So you would just set this here. Let me just get a jump ring really quick. I like to use twisted jump rings. Not sure I have enough made, but I do. So, twisted jump rings are incredibly strong. take 20 gauge square wire, I twist the wire, and then I wrap it around my 6-step bail making pliers to make a series of jump rings. So this is all you're gonna do. You're gonna set this. And by the way, you guys, you can decide on what's your front and what's your back. It's equally as beautiful on the back. It's really up to you. I like this side the best. All you're gonna do is run your jump ring through there. Make sure that you drop the front face of your bead. An easy thing sometimes to do is just very gently squeeze them closer together, and then grab your flat nose and rock your jump rings. The beauty about twisted jump rings is they're almost seamless looking after you oxidize and tumble your piece. I've had times where I've had to fix something after I've done all that and I could not find the seam. That's another thing I really love about them. So as before, I'm going to put this so I know it's towards the front. And that is my back. Just going to do a very gentle squeeze together. And then I can rock my jump rings together. And here's another technique. I like to come in and flatten, squeeze really hard where that seam is. And here is our beautiful butterfly princess necklace. Let's see if I can hold that on the right angle. I love it with the aqua and the natural copper. Isn't that gorgeous, you guys? I really hope you enjoyed that. Give me your feedback. This is a step-by-step tutorial. Please share my channel. Remember the thumbs up. Have a magical, fabulous wire wrap day. Bye for now.